Hi, you're watching Bike Routes of Brum, a channel dedicated to finding safe cycle routes across Birmingham. In this video we'll be cycling from Stirchley to Chamberlain Square in the city centre. In this route we'll be following the National Cycle Network Route 5, also known as the Rea Valley Route. The route consists of cycle paths, parks and quiet roads and will take about half an hour to cycle, which, if you factor in train times and walking from the station, can actually be one of the fastest routes into the city. I've put a link to the route into the description so you can download the GPX file and follow it for yourself. So we're starting in the centre of Stirchley and we're going to cross onto Pershaw Road here and then take the first left onto Hazelwell Road. We're going to ride it all the way down to the end. It's basically, there's a trading estate at the end. It's usually quite quiet, this road, but just look out for some of the bigger lorries like that do come down here from time to time. But we just go up this curb onto the pavement and we're now onto the NCN 5, the Rea Valley Route. You've got Brum Brewery there just on your right. This route basically goes all the way from Longbridge or Rubery actually, down at the end of Birmingham, and it goes right into the city centre. And it's a really nice way to get in, mostly off the road, through parks like this, Hazelwell Park. Now, Hazelwell Park is open all the time. There's no gates or anything, so it does mean that in the winter, if you wanted, you could cycle through here. It's not lit or anything. You just have these kind of cat's eyes that are just along the side, so it's not ideal, but I guess if you got kind of bright lights, you could probably go for it. Now we're coming up to the crossing with Cartland Road here. It's a toucan crossing and for both cycles and pedestrians, and we cross now over into 10 acres. 10 acres starts off as kind of this open field. We've got the river running to our left and they've planted a load of apple trees over there, so in a few years I think that will really start to look nice. Basically this path then goes down this hill and then curves off, so if you're coming down here in the winter, just kind of be careful because it can get a little bit slippy. Now this stretch of the river is actually really pleasant to cycle along, especially if it's like a nice sunny morning. If you look carefully, sometimes you can see kingfishers as well, which is pretty cool. So then we come past this bridge and through this kind of tunnel of trees and into a nice open bit where there's a couple of picnic benches, and that's going to be really useful because we're actually coming up just behind the famous Dad's Lane Chippy, which is just to your right there. We come down this little bit now and avoid any pedestrians. Sometimes the gates are open there, sometimes they're not. There's lights here that we go across over Dogpool Lane, and then the path's kind of split between a cycle lane and pedestrians. You hop off onto here and onto Cecil Road. Now, as you can see, this road is really not very well paved at all. It does need a lot of work doing to it. There's kind of occasional strips that you can go along of nice smooth bits, but for the most part it's not great. We take a right then onto Kitchener Road and you can observe the horrendous parking, and then we're going onto this path and into Pebble Mill playing fields. Now this is quite a long stretch along here and you've got the River Ray to your right now. It can get quite busy on the weekends, this path, as it's one of the main routes up to Cannon Hill Park, but if you're commuting in the morning, it's not usually too bad. There's maybe a few people on here, but it's quite manageable. The surface isn't great, so just bear that in mind. It can be a bit bumpy, especially around the trees, and you see all the roots coming through. As I'm recording this audio, they've actually started digging up part of the playing field, this part actually to your left now. I'm not sure what they're doing with it or why, but it could be completely different by the time you actually come to do this. So we go over that bridge and we're now on the edge of Holders Lane playing fields, which is basically the other side of the river. Now this stretch can get quite busy as well, especially during weekends and school holidays, so it's just something to bear in mind as you're cycling along here after work. In the mornings it's not usually too bad, it's just full of runners, cyclists and dog walkers, but during the day it can be quite a lot of kids along here, so just bear that in mind. Now we go up this little hill here and we come to this nice little open space to your right that they've stopped mowing recently, and I think it's quite a nice touch as it's great for the wildlife. Now we're just coming up to the start of Cannon Hill Park, and it's got to be one of the most well known and well loved parks in the city. This patch on the right here is quite often used for car parking for Edgbaston Cricket Ground, so if you're ever driving, they might get you to park there. This area was donated to the city by Louisa Ryland, and it was opened in September 1873, and it's just one of those classic Victorian city parks that loads of cities from that era have. I think the day I was filming there must have been some sort of event on the night before, which is why it's not looking at its finest, but usually it's a really lovely park to cycle through, especially on a nice sunny morning like this. Now, this building coming up on the left is an old pub called the Golden Lion Inn, and it was moved here from Digbeth in 1911. I think it was built in the 16th century apparently, and there's been some efforts to try and move it back, but so far nothing's happened, and it's just kind of been left to rot in the park, which is a massive shame really, as there's so few Tudor buildings left in the city. It'd be heartbreaking if it just kind of was left there to crumble. But crumbling buildings aside, Cannon Hill Park is really nice. There's loads to do here. You can hire pedlos, there's mini golf, there's kind of rides for kids to go on. It's definitely worth a visit if you're in town. Now, we're just coming up to the exit now. We kind of go through that flower arch, and you can just see Edgbaston Cricket Ground to your left. If you want to go there, you would just carry on the cycle route. But we cross over, and we're on to Cannon Hill Road on this nice little cycle lane. Quite often it's filled with cars, especially if there's a cricket match on, and it just kind of pops you out past the junction. We go left here onto Willow Crescent. We're now kind of round the back of the cricket ground. This road curves round and becomes Harbury Road, and you follow this to the end then. It's not usually too busy with cars, because the only reason to go on this road really is for residential access, so you won't really have any problems along here. It's got a few speed bumps as well, which kind of limits people from bombing it down here. We get to the end, and we get to the nice paved bit now on Edward Road. We cross over and onto Cheddar Road. Now this is a cul-de-sac, so again you're not going to come across loads of vehicles, and it has got some nice features on here to kind of make the cars wiggle around, and it's quite a nice touch. I don't see it often in Birmingham, so I'm always quite happy when I see stuff like that. It kind of slows people down. So now we hop up onto this cycle path that runs along the edge of Calthorpe Park, and we follow it along to Clevedon Road. I think, as you can see, it's kind of a bit overgrown. It's not the greatest of cycle paths, to be honest. A bit of the park does tend to go over. There's big lumps in it where the roots have been, but it does keep you off the road, so I'm not going to complain about it too much. One of the worst bits you'll see just coming up to here as we cross over Balsall Heath Road is like where these plants have really overgrown. Actually, at the time of recording this, they have mowed it back, so it is a lot better now. But now just look to your right, and then we're going to cross over onto this nice little intersection here where it punts the cyclist just ahead of the buses, which is a really nice touch. I think there's only one bus route that goes through, so you won't come across too many, but it's nice that it's there anyway. And now we come onto Highgate Street, and we follow this now over the bridge here, and this roundabout with a strange little cycle path that just punch you out into cars, which doesn't really make any sense, onto Gooch Street. No laughing at the name, please. And we follow this for a little while. This street actually isn't too bad. I remember the first time I was going to go down it, I was a bit unsure, but there's not much through traffic thanks to that intersection with Belgrave Middleway there, so it's actually not too bad to cycle along. But we come now to the junction with Sherlock Street, and to be honest, this is probably one of the worst bits of the route. This cycle lane really isn't very good. Drivers often come out of that junction there without looking, so I like to turn onto Lower Essex Street here, and it just gets you off Sherlock Street quite quickly, and it's not usually too busy. They are doing some construction work along there now, so there might be some big vehicles, but it is one way and it's usually quite quiet. And now we take a right onto Kent Street, and we ride this to the end and then left onto Hurst Street and follow this up. And again, we can go straight ahead as cyclists through this little junction here. Quite often there's a lorry there whenever I go through it. Usually I would just go straight through but I just wanted to make a point of going down the little cycle lane bit. Now we come over here into this kind of open bit on Hurst Street in Chinatown, and we go through. Again, just be careful with that square because there can be some pedestrians on there, especially if you're going through the middle of the day. If you're in the morning, it's usually quite quiet. Cyclists have their own lane over this small but Queensway, and we carry on over up Hill Street, the aptly named Hill Street. Just be careful with these lights, you are meant to stop, and carry on all the way up. That's New Street Station to your right. Now, coming up on our right is the Transport for West Midlands Cycle Hub. So if you're looking for somewhere safe to store your bikes, you can always register with that. You get a Swift card that basically gives you access, and it's a pretty good way actually to keep your bike safe if you're going anywhere from New Street. Now we cross over and we go up this last little bit of Hill Street. Just keep an eye on big vehicles coming out from the left there, but it's usually quite quiet. It's quite steep, this bit, so I'm just thankful I didn't use the audio here, otherwise you'd hear a lot of puffing and panting. We go up just around these seats and over the tram line, and we're into Victoria Square now, just the last little leg. And we avoid those signs there, and we have basically reached our destination into Chamberlain Square. Thanks again for watching the video. I hope you found it useful. If you have any other ideas for alternate routes or want to mention anything that I've forgotten, please feel free to comment below. I try to upload these videos as much as I can, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any routes. Thanks again for watching.